to the second half of SCCM introduction, and the second half is definitely has to do with we having, a tour around the SCCM environment. Okay, so you can have an appreciation of what I've said so far to see how it looks like. Then from the next class, we go into more practicals, you understanding, other things in terms of logs, in terms of creating a lot of things. So today is just it's just going to be a kind of an overview of the environment, apart from the overview in terms of functionalities, in terms of what SCCM is all about, in terms of its history, in terms of the capabilities, functionalities, the core functions, that we talked about. So we're going to log into our SCCM environment. Normally, every organization, majority of the organizations, they have different approaches for you to be able to log into the environment. One of them is that some organizations do create what we call RDS. So in case you go for an interview and they're asking you for what it's all about. So what I'm saying is that a lot of organizations have what we call a jump box, whereby you will not connect to SCCM directly from your machine. You remote into the jump box. Then from the jump box, you can now, go into SCCM. Sometimes you have SCCM console installed on that jump box, so you launch it from there. And the whole essence why they do that sometimes is to be able to have control. And also because the SCCM might be in another domain or subnet, or if it's not, but it's a shared environment that will not allow you to directly connect, into that. So you need to move. And I guess Frazel has that experience where he has to go through a jump box before, it goes into that, same as every other configuration within organization. So what they always do, again, is that rather than having the configuration manager installed on everybody's machine that will be using the SCCM console, they rather just put it on the jump box. I install the console there, and anybody that wants to use it, log into the jump box and do whatever you want to do. So they don't have to install the configuration manager console on all IT systems. So that's what organizations do most times. It saves them a lot of energy to start doing a lot of configuration manager installments on workstations for them to be able to have access to it. So in our situation, I'm just going to be RDPing because it's more of a training section. So I'll be RDPing into the SCCM server, and our SCCM server, it's on RDP. We have our SCCM server on 192.168.10.4, and I'll be logging in. Okay, let me use my credentials to log in. So. Oh, sorry, I'm not sharing my screen. Let me share my screen, sorry. Okay, so I hope you guys can see my screen now. Can you guys see my screen? Okay.
Yes, I can see.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to be RDPing into the system. Thank you. So. Okay, so this is the system. We're RDPing into it. So this is our SCCM server, and here for this lab, what we've done is to deploy both the SCCM itself and the SQL on the same machine. So both of them are here, but this class does not cover that. Like I said, some other functions is covered within the senior infrastructure class. Okay, so minimize this. Now, when you want to access SCCM, the configuration manager console, it comes with this icon. If you can see it here, can everybody see it? So when you see this, sometimes it's on your desktop, sometimes it is not mapped there. You just have to go to, start window, and you go on them. Like I said, because of the name change, you now see Microsoft Endpoint Manager, and you see other things there. You have your software center that I make mention to you the other time. We're still going to go there. And what we need now is the configuration manager console, which is the same thing as what is here. So you can just click on it. And in some organizations, there are different levels at which they'll call. Sometimes you might not be able to go there with your regular account. So you might need to right click. If it's deployed on your own machine, you might not be able to use your regular account to go in. So you might need to right click and, connect as an administrator. Then it's going to ask you for your elevated account. Then you can use your elevated account to be able to launch it. So if you don't have an elevated account, your regular account might not be able to open it. So that's what I mean. So like I said, there are different configurations depending on the organization and the level of security that exists within the organization. Okay. So now this is SCCM, that we've been talking about things. And when it comes to SCCM, there are 4 major categories that exist within the console. One of the console is what we call the assets and compliance. The second one is referred to as software library. The third one is monitor. And the fourth one is administration. And by the time you put your mouse on it, it's going to tell you what each one of them stands for. Like you see, assets and compliance, what they put there, it tells you that this is where you can manage users, you can manage your device, you can manage software and compliances, okay? For the hierarchy, and that's for your organization. That is what you can do there, okay? And under the software library, it allows you to be able to deploy application, to deploy software updates, or you can do operating system deployment using task sequence, okay? And you have your monitor, where you monitor all alerts, all queries, all reporting, deployment, whatever, the status of your distribution point, the status of your software update point. You want to check the status of content distributed to each of your distribution point and all. Then you have the administration, where you manage your config manager infrastructure. And this has to do with your client, your site, your client sensing, and what have you. So we're going to be looking at each one of these functions, and for you to have a better appreciation, of the entire environment. So if you're asked to work within there. Now, again, one thing you should have at the back of your mind is that if you join an organization, in some instances, if you're not working at level 3 or level 4, you might not have access to everything that you're going to see today. Because whatever you see has to do with the roles or permission that is assigned to you. If you are assigned a role as application deployment officer or manager, what you're going to see is going to be different from someone that is assigned with the role to run software updates, okay? It's different from someone given the full administrative right, to be able to operate within the SCCM environment. So like I said, whatever permission that is assigned to you determine what you see when you log in into the configuration manager console. Now, like we all know, and it's all there on the screen, part of the functions that you're going to be doing has to do with users, and you'll see it here when you click with users, okay? But before we go into asset and compliance, I want us to go to administration first, so you have a better appreciation of what we're going to be explaining across all board. Now, when you get to administration, this is where you do all your configuration. And Kanishika, if you remember the question you asked, you're asking me, when updates are being released for SCCM, does it automatically install into the machine? And I told you no, it's just going to be made available, which you can download. You can run a prerequisite check, and there are a lot of things that come into play before you do the upgrade, which is the reason why it is not automatically deployed immediately it is made available. And I make mention of what we call change management process. You want to run a prerequisite check to check if your system is ready for the change. Then number 2 is for you to be able to tell your management about additional features that comes with it, and you look at it, if it resolves any of the challenges you have, if any of those challenges are pertaining to your organization, and for you to look at not just what is resolving, but also focusing on the additional features that comes with it. And that comes under updates and services. So if you click on updates and services, you will see here that Configuration Manager 2010 is deployed, right? But there is Office that is released by Microsoft, and this was released in January 9, 2021. So I tell you that it's fixed issues explained in this KB. And I believe that you guys remember what KB is all about. We talked about this. And if you want to see in details, the URL is down here under full information. So by the time you go to this link, it's going to give you in detail what exactly is being resolved. So in summary, when you talk about updates and services, you're looking at updating and looking at services that will let you install the recent, update as it becomes available, by Microsoft. So it now depends on your own organization approval processes that determines on when you allow this to occur within your organization. You have what we call hierarchy configuration. This is the first configuration. This is where you come first when you first deploy your SCCM. And there are a lot of things you do there. This allows you to be able to manage your boundaries. It allows you to be able to do site-to-site communication. It allows you to be able to run a lot of discoveries It allows you to be able to link your Active Directory, Forest, and Exchange servers, in terms of setting. And what am I saying? You have an Active Directory. I make mention to you the reason why you need Active Directory schema during installation. Now, again, I told you that SCCM gets all this information from the Active Directory. It means that you have to point to it. It does not just automatically brings out all the users, all the groups, all the computers that exist within your SCCM, but you now have to point to which of the organizational units you want to bring out, or you want to connect to the entire forest, where it detects everything that exists within your organization. And that's why you see where you have the discovery method. So these are the way at which it is done. So you have different discovery methods. Number one is this is where you discover your forest. It is set to on, and it's going to pull down all the information within the Active Directory forest. Okay, whatever come into existence, note this, whatever come into existence, SCCM is a one-way traffic, meaning that it gets information from the Active Directory. If anything happens, probably the object does not exist again in the Active Directory. It does not delete from SCCM. You have to either have a script that automatically remove it, or you have to do it yourself. So you have to do the cleanup, or you have a script that does the cleanup. So it's garbage in, it doesn't go out automatically, but you have to set it. So this is where you set, the discovery and say, hey, I want to discover my Active Directory forest. And the system will go in and look at it. And you can schedule how often do you want SCCM to check, depending on the complexity of the environment, depending on traffic, depending on utilization. You specify how often you want SCCM to go into your Active Directory and discover new computers, discover new users, discover new groups, and make it available within SCCM for usage. Okay, so whatever you specify as your schedule will now determine how often it will go there to discover new objects. That's why any machine you provide, so any user you create, will show in SCCM. When the scheduled time gets reached, it's going to check the differential from what you have that exists within Active Directory and bring everything back. Okay, that is what it does. So that is it. And you specify, you can do number of days. You can say, okay, I want it to be done every day. I want to be done every hour or whatever, or, in weeks, depending on, like I said, depending on your environment, depending on the business needs, we now determine how often this information are made available. Okay, another thing you want to do is you want to tell the system, say, I haven't discovered my forest. I want you to discover every group that exists within my Active Directory. And you see, say, configure settings that configuration manager used to find groups from the Active Directory domain. So you're going to click there, and this is how it was created. So you see here was enabled, and I'm not going deep into this. This, in terms of configuration, it's on the advanced class. This is just to give you a kind of an overview of what is done. So even when you're working and you're not doing in full details, you understand and you have a better appreciation. So this is how the group was created, and you see that it's pointing, to my group. And I say, go to my domain on the root and give me every group that exists within that. And I specify my path that I want that information to retrieve that information for me. And it's going to go there and retrieve everything. That is how groups are being discovered. Okay. And when that is done, you specify your pooling schedule. Like I said, how often do you want this to occur? Then you can now enable the delta differential. When mean delta, it means the differential from the original discovery to the concurrent ones that will now be discovering after the first one was delivered. Okay, and you have other options here where you can specify, what kind of perimeter or yardsticks, what is the algorithm in terms of your mechanisms where the system will use to discover objects. You might want to say, I only want you to discover, computers that that log into the domain within stipulated number of times. And when it is more than that, it's not going to identify them. It's not going to discover them, meaning that if they never, or if they're not on the active logging into your corporate network, it's not going to see them, which is the reason when I was talking about the client check, I was telling you about what you can do while you run other partial scripting that remediates your client checking by running different policies within your organization. So you can also specify and say, okay, I want you to discover the computers that have updated their computer account password within a particular point in time. And people do this when they're trying to prevent non-compliance. from getting into the SCCM environment. So you can say anybody that is not compliant, not following the procedures of changing password, I don't want them to be discovered. I don't want anything to be distributed to them as such. Do not bring them into the SCCM environment so that they're not beneficiary of any application or any patches or any settings that exist within that platform. Okay? And this is also to discover the membership of each of the distribution groups. So that's what that is all about. Then we have for system. Now we have discovered the forest. We say, oh, this is our forest. This is where I want you to retrieve information from. Then you now have to now specify what information are you discovering, which is the reason why we enable the group. This is also the reason why we're going to be enabling computers. You want to be able to manage computers within, your SCCM. You want it to come out because computers is the reason. Those are objects that you want to target in terms of deploying applications to, in terms of running patches to, and stuff like that. So here is where we specify where exactly within an organizational unit. And what we're specifying is we're not saying we're narrowing it to a particular organizational unit, but we are targeting the root, the forest, and say anything, any computer within this forest, I want them to be discovered. So this is where you put it. You don't have to type manual. You can just click on browse and you can specify. It will connect directly to your Active Directory and you can specify where and where. So I target everything to go on the forest and give me everything relating to what I've specified and for the system to bring it out. Okay, so now here you will see that we did not specify any account. It is because that we're using the account of the machine. The local account that was used for deployment, there's an account set and say, use these credentials to be able to connect and retrieve those information for us. Okay? And it has as well other attributes and also the polling on what kind of information that you're looking for. Same as I was explaining when we were talking about the group discovery. Okay? We have what we call users. Now we have seen system. We want SCCM to also see all the users that exist within that aspect. By the time you go open, you now specify it and say, hey, this is where I want my users to be obtained from, then you specify. Okay, and the users will go there, depending on what level within your Active Directory that you specified that user should come out from. Okay, so we have that, and you can specify, like I said, the pool scheduling, where you determine what exactly the duration in terms of the delta. How often do you want SCCM to check within your Active Directory to discover new users? So it looks at the delta. When I mean the delta is that it looks at the difference that exists from the last time it was run to, 5 minutes later. Is there any difference within there when it comes to users, when it comes to system, when it comes to group? And the system will bring in the delta, meaning the difference that exists there, and make it available within your SCCM. Now, this is add-bit. This one is one that determines in terms of configuration in the interface that the configuration manager client to periodically send discovery data records to site. Okay? And this is your network discovery. So if you do this, it's going to give you everything relating to SNMP, DHCP clients, and what have you. So majority of the time, we don't configure this. We just specify to what we want. We don't want everything and say everything, because if I pick that, in terms of network discovery, the system will be looking at all the printers and we're bringing out all devices. We don't want to manage all that, so we're not discovering at that level. So we limit what we're looking for, okay? This is boundaries. How do you configure your boundaries? What is it meant for? The whole essence of it is that there are some times where you'll be looking at, like I said, depending on the business need, you can decide your organization can have a primary site server and have site servers across all regions. Taking an example, I have office in Nigeria, I have office in Afghanistan, I have office in Pakistan, I have my main office in Toronto. So I can say that I don't want users in Pakistan or users from Nigeria to use Toronto as their distribution point or obtaining data from there. I just want them to get certain instructions, but when it comes to their data bank, which is their distribution point, I want them to relate with their site server, meaning that I will configure a site server in their environment. And even though we're in the same corporate network, because of my boundaries, I can specify what their site server is, and whatsoever information that needs to be downloaded will be downloaded from that site server, rather than coming to Toronto to download information. Now, you can look at the distance, look at latency, look at how long it will take for them to download. If someone in Nigeria has to download information from Toronto, or someone in Afghanistan or Pakistan has to download from Toronto. That's the reason why you want something within their domain, so that you can balance, you can do a kind of a load balance on your network. So you want downloading of content to happen within your local network and not on the bandwidth relating to your internet. The only time you'll be consigned is when you're provisioning content and you want to distribute to the distribution points in the site. So when you set up your boundaries in terms of subnet and all, depending on how you want to set it, either by subnet or by IP range, then you can specify which one exactly is going to be your site server, and they can get the information from there, which is the reason why you have boundaries, okay, where you can now configure and say, hey, this should be my point of contact in this location. This should be my point of contact in this location. This should be my point of contact in this location, okay? In the senior class, we'll be looking at, even though I might talk about it a little here, but in the senior class, you'll be looking at where we'll be talking about the reason why you should have a primary site, the reason why you should have a secondary site, the reason why people use these site servers, what is the constraint, what is the requirement, at what point, what kind of number of systems can be used within a primary site, what kind of systems can be used within a secondary site, okay, and why exactly do you need to create all this, okay? You're looking at a situation whereby when you have bandwidth issues, connectivity and all, you want to ensure that, okay, that's the reason why I was explaining the other time, that you can have a kind of a point of contact, which is the site server at each of these locations. At the same time, you can manage each one of them, within their own cluster. Now, there's what we call a central administration, which allows you to be able to manage multiple primary site servers. Okay, like I said, we're not dangling into a lot of that because it's not covered in this tutorial, in this training. So we'll be looking at, more advanced. When we get to the advanced class, we'll be talking more relating to that. So you have your boundary group. These boundary groups now allow you to be able to create a group for all of them. So you can create boundary groups and say, okay, all of you have a different site servers. I can bring all of you together and create a boundary group for you, meaning that sometimes I might have a deployment that is meant for all my locations, the one in Nigeria, the one in Afghanistan, the one in Pakistan, the one in India. When I push to this, I want every other person, I want the system to bring everybody together in different kind of groups and have them together and have the deployment. And because you can have multiple groups as well, depending on the complexity and the number of Active Directory you're dealing with. Like I said, majority of this configuration has to do with the business need. So based on the business need or business demand, you'll be able to run your architecture and be able to design the one that best fits what your organization is looking for. You have what we call the exchange, where you do your Exchange server connector. So this is one that gives you that flexibility or capability to be able to connect to your exchange, which was what I was discussing the other time. So the system will be able to bring it out here and you can manage the accounts and all. You have your database replication, okay? And, this goes a long way. And you all know, I've explained to you guys what replication is all about in one of our classes, but this now is now for SCCM. You can create your database replication. You can create a file replication as well. Okay, and this is your Active Directory forest. So whichever Active Directory that you're connecting to, like I said, you can have multiple domains, multiple forests that you can manage within a single SCCM. So questions will come out and people will tell you that can you manage more than one, okay, Active Directory forest, within your SCCM. So here, depending on the configuration, depending on what is done, sometimes it's a situation whereby you have to manage manage or configure what we call the trusted domain and untrusted domain, and you have them all modeled up together where you can now use a single SCCM to manage all of them. Depending on the configuration, like I said, we now determine on what you're doing. Majority of it lies with the business requirement that you work with. This is the cloud services that I was studying the other time. So what I've done here is that I've configured Microsoft Intune and I've merged it, within with my SCCM, which is the reason why I talked about a co-management, if you remember. And I said there's a difference between a co-management and coexistence. In a co-management, you're talking about you managing configuration manager with Intune. But in a coexistence, you're managing configuration manager with a third party. What we're talking about that is when you're looking at advances and all, and you're syncing everything together. So because I run more, on the Microsoft shop, even though I use a lot of services. So my main centric being a Microsoft certified trainer, I talk more, when it gets to that. Only when there are demands, we digress into other things and, we talked about everything to ensure that you have a comprehensive understanding on different architectures as well. These are Azure Services where you connect your Active Directory on what you want to discover and also the group. We have, this is just cloud service as a whole. So you have your Active Directory tenant, you have your cloud distribution point, your cloud management gateway. Okay, we're not going into all that. But we have what we call your site configuration, okay? On the site configuration, what you do is that it gives you your site that you're managing, which is the primary site server, and you can get a lot of functions on what you can do in terms of you configuring the software distribution, software updates, operating system deployment, management point. Management point is just like a mediator between the user, the SCCM primary site server and its systems, meaning that whatsoever system being a workstation on the server, when they want to communicate, they get instructions through that. So the management point is the one that allows that communication to exist between both of them. So depending on the configuration, some organizations do have what we call MP failover. When you hear MP, it means management point. When you hear DP, it means distribution point. When you hear SD, it means software distribution point. When you hear SUP, you mean software update point. So they're different acronyms and all. It's just the name. They just pick the first letters of all. So you have client settings as well. This is where you configure how you want your client deployment to be. And when I mean client deployment, I'm talking about SCCM clients, how you want to configure it and how you want its deployment to occur on each of your workstations or your servers. So you have site maintenance as well, where you can configure site maintenance. It gives you what and what. So for now, we're not doing backups for our SCCM server because we're currently we're doing one configuration now, having a vCenter configured and moving all our virtual machines from one host to the other, which is currently what we're working on. So once that is done, it's going to be going to backup, the Vim, which I make mention to you guys in our server class when I explained Vim backup to you guys, where we'll be linking each of our information here to be downloading there, just in case we have issue at any point in time with our SCCM. So here you can now specify your configurations, some configurations on what you want and what you want to disable. Okay. So yeah, that for that. Then we have your site server. Currently, we have only we have two site servers here. One has to do with the one for the cloud, and we have the one for on-prem, where we have lots of rows which we've put into it. Okay, these rows function in terms of its functions. They're more than this, but all details and everything comes in the advanced class, where we tell you the instance of each of the rows, what it does, and how you configure it when it is needed, and what you need to put as a configuration when configuring each one of them. So we have a client setting, and a lot of things is being done at the client settings level. So you have the device settings and user settings on what kind of configuration you want to have that is being pushed to a collection or group of users within your environment. So you can try to target all the computers within your environment and say, hey, this is what I want, or based on collections and say, this settings I want them to go on each one of them. So we have a priority which I didn't deploy. Based on the lower the number, the high priority they are. So on the different settings, what we have so far, if I come to deployment properties, it's going to come up. You see a lot of things being configured when we deploy software to a user. What exactly do we want in terms of reboot? So here you specify what and what you want to configure, and you can now do it here. Okay, so this one takes care of our restart. We're saying that when a software deployment app, we deploy anything in terms of application that requires a reboot, I want you to notify them, in 60 minutes, and first inform them that in 60 minutes their computer is going to be started. In 15 minutes, bring out a countdown, that comes there, and that is it. So you specify a lot of things as far as also remote control, remote tools. This, even though SCCM allows you to remote into users and do a lot of things, if you don't enable the features, then you cannot be able to do it. So you have to configure each one of them here. And also you see software deployment, you specify what and what configuration. In terms of the software inventory, you have hardware inventory that we talked about. You have computer agents. A lot of configurations are here, okay, that, you have to put into consideration when configuring everything. Like I said, in detail, is not part of this, training, but in the advanced training class. So that's what client setting is all about. So we have the security. Remember I said, depending on the accounts or the permission that is being given to you on the roles, determine on what you see. So by the time you come here, you're going to see administrative users and other users. So what we've done is to create a group within, rather than do individual, but you have to see username. What I've done is to create a group within my Active Directory and put those users there and assign them the kind of permissions I want. So you see, I say for L2 people, I want them to be able to log in to use Application Deployment Manager alone, not any other thing. So you can specify. So depending on the kind of security role you've assigned, determines on what they see on their interface when they log in into the computer. So if you come to security roles, these are all the roles that exist within SCCM, okay? And you can also create custom roles as well, where you can pick from each one of them roles. And I want you to do certain things. I can create a custom role. Rather than giving you a full permission or a full administrator, I would rather make maybe 2 or more roles together based on what I want you to do. I can assign to you. I can create a what's it called? A user group, a group within my Active Directory. Add users to there and assign to it, meaning that by the time you're done and I remove that from you, we no longer have access to be able to do all that. So majority of the configuration are done on eye level, and that's why I told you guys, I gave you guys a week break and say revise everything you've done on your Active Directory class, because if you really want to know SCCM, then you need to have an appreciation of that. But if you're only targeting on in terms of application deployment process, you don't need to bother yourself, because your L3 guys will be the ones to do all the configuration. But I bet you to tell you that you cannot go this far and say you just want to limit your skill to only being, to be able to do little things rather than having a full understanding of the entire SCCM environment. Okay. Then we have your security group here. Okay, and you have your account. So the system states the account there has been specified. Then you have certificates. This tells you all the certificates that was generated as in block, depending on what you want. So you can decide to turn it on or turn it off. So you look at it. If it's something you don't want, just block it. The ones you want, enable it, and the system do what it's supposed to do. Then you have your console all the users that are using the console. So it tells you, gives you the account and you know that they're using. So here you can know who and who have the console deployed on their machine and who is using it. You know who is using it and who has it. So you have your distribution point. We have only one distribution. Okay, we have 2. Sorry, because of the cloud. I continue to forget that I will configure the cloud aspect. So you have a cloud version and we have the on-prem. So they will try to push an application to people, on the DMZ zone, that's on the internet within the cloud. When you make it available here and it's been configured, they will be able to get the content. Then here is for people on-prem, for them to be able to get any application that you deploy to them. Now, this is distribution point group. This is where you can pull together a group of distribution points. How does this occur? Taking an example, I make mention of Africa when I was talking. Assuming in Africa, I have more than one site. Probably I have 4 sites. 1 in Nigeria, 1 in Ghana, 1 in Cameroon, 1 in Mauritius. Okay, and I have, in Asia, I have 4. So what I can do is that I can group them. I can create a group for each of the regions and say, Africa, all your distribution points, regardless of what I want you to gather. And the whole essence is that I might want a deployment to go to Africa. I don't want to specify either Nigeria, Mauritius, or Ghana, or Cameroon. I just want it to go to all those places. I can create a group distribution point and send it there. So any distribution point within that range will be able to get the content as well, or rather than doing it individually. Okay. And the whole essence again that is good is that if you decide to improvise and provide new distribution points, rather than you redistributing content to that system, immediately you add that to that distribution point. Immediately you add that distribution point as part of the distribution point group. It gets all the content that you have pushed already before it was created, so you don't have to do it yourself. Okay, so we have migration. This is where we looked at migration in total. You have your migration job, distribution points migration, depending on what you're configuring. Then we have the management insight. So like I said, if I should step back, when talking about migration, you're looking at when you're managing migration of data from site in configuration manager hierarchy to site in the configuration manager hierarchy. So you're moving from one thing to the other. But when you look at management insight, you're looking at a better understanding of your environment and taking actions when it needs. They give you an analysis and a point, for you to be able to analyze data within your database. So you can use that to have a good appreciation of what is going on within your terrain. So you can look at each one of them across this level, get information, have an insight of what is going on in each one of them. Then you can run whatever deployment you want to run. So I open this, and it tells me that here there are 2 actions. Okay. So here there are 2 actions, collection with the same evaluation time and this. It need action, but every other one is good. So it gives you an appreciation of what you need to do. Then you can take necessary actions. It's just giving you kind of an insight of what is going on across board, not just limiting to everyone, but based on each of these, management level for you to have a comprehensive, or to have not comprehensive, to have a kind of overview of what is going on over there. So that is for administration. And I purposely do this first, and rather than going in sequence and go to monitor, I'll go back to asset and compliance for you to an appreciation of what was done, before that was done in administration before we move to asset and compliance. So the floor is open a minute or two, should in case any one of you have a question before we move back to asset and compliance. The floor is open, please.
No question from my side.
Thank you. Any other person? Anything? Okay, silence is golden. So let's go into asset and compliance. Like I told you, after we configured the user, once the cycle is run, the system is going to give you all the users. Now, here 2 things are happening here because we have an hybrid solution where we have Microsoft, our Azure AD connected, we have Intune connected. So all configuration are coming here as it is available online. So you see here it's saying on-prem, some of them are just in the cloud that it's been done. And here it's going to give us, remember that when we're in under administration, we talked about user, we talked about group, where the system will discover all the group that exists within the system. We also discovered all the users that exist. I'm talking about the Active Directory now and bring everything out. Now here it talks about devices. This one gives you all the devices that exist within your prem, both online and in cloud. So here you will see under certificates. Now again, you cannot introduce Microsoft Intune without going through a secured pipe, which is called the SSL. So rather than having a single sign, a self-sign, we created a certificate, which I mentioned earlier in my explanation. So we created a certificate, and we converted it from self-sign to PKI. So the system automatically changes by itself, and we run all these changes also on our distribution point and also with our software centers, and all these things changes. Now, here we'll be giving you the name of the computer as it is from your Active Directory. It's going to be telling you if SCCM agent is installed on the machine or not. It's going to be telling you who is the primary user of this system, and it's going to tell you who is currently logged onto those machines. It's going to tell you based on your site code what was created, and this tells you in terms of client activities if that machine is active or not active. This tells you about the kind of clients and certificate on it. Here identified to you if it's a computer or not a computer. You will see here that you have ESSI. This is our vCenter, that runs on its own application. So it's not, so it doesn't see it as a computer. It's just pretty known because it doesn't identify what it is, and there's no agent installed on it. Okay, so these are the version of the SCCM agent that is installed. As you continue to upgrade each of the console, like we stated here under updates and services, it's going to tell you what version it is running. So there are previous versions as well, because we upgraded to this configuration manager before we had older version of clients, and you will see there that one of the machines which has not been available for some time does not have the latest version because this system does not exist anymore. So, but we've not cleaned it up. That's why you see that it's still having the old agent installed on it, and you see that the client version is different from the version of every other one that exists here. You can get as many options in terms of your tab here. All you need to do is just right click here, and you see what you want to see the system. So I can decide to say I want you to tell me the Active Directory site that each of these systems belong. So the system is going to pick it out and it's going to give you. So here you see it's saying default because we didn't put a name tag to each one of them. So if I go back and change from the default first name, which is what we see here, by the time you come here, so I can decide to change the name here. So I can come there, go to properties. That's where it sees the name from. Okay, which is this. So I can decide to change this Active Directory, the name, and I can decide to change it to a site code. So I can click here and change whatever it is. So that's what is then subscription, but I can change the site name rather than having this. I can now base it based on each of the OUs, based on each of the sites and what was configured at which level. So coming back here, yep, sometimes I don't like it too crowded over here. So if you need anything, you bring it out. If you don't need it, you yank it out of it. So, yeah, so here you have collection, and collection does not just exist itself. You have to create a collection, but there are default collections that comes when you run your the policies, that was created, for each of those things you discovered. By default, you will see all user group, all users, okay, and all users and user group. This three by default comes when you run whatever configuration that you do under your administration when you're doing your discovery method, okay? Every other one, like these two, config manager L2 deployment and config manager L3, where I created it, and I linked it to a group created in the Active Directory. The whole essence is for me to be able to control, the kind of security role I'm assigning to, users based on the kind of group that was created. The same way you have for user collection, the same way we have for device collection. By default, you're going to see all unknown computers. And as we continue to proceed with our training, we'll be looking at what is meant for. Normally, we don't have to wait. When you create a task sequence and you want people to be able to image machines, you don't know the computer, so you want to target all unknown computers. So because you have to deploy it, and you don't want to deploy to a particular collection. You're saying that I don't know whoever that wants to, in terms of computers, that all of them to just come, into it. Let me see, I need to change my headsets. I'm running out of battery. So let's still be using it. If it doesn't go off, then by the time it goes off, I'm just going to change. So if you can't hear me, just let me know ahead of time so I can switch the headset. So here we also have for all mobile. If you're managing mobile, you're going to see everything here. All provisioning devices. This came up with the new ones when the endpoint configuration manager came out. Okay, that's when we had that it came out. Then all systems comes out by itself. Then I created some days, and the whole essence why I created these is I don't want to target machines that does not have SCCM agents. I want to target only machines with SCCM agents. So this gives me to be able to understand how many machines I have within an environment that have SCCM agents as against the number of machines I have within my SCCM environment that does not support that. Okay. Then this is my orchestration group, and the good part about an orchestration group is that it gives you that flexibility to be able to update devices based on a percentage, specific numbers, or and explicit orders. And it's always good because you can also run with PowerShell scripting, before and after the devices run an update deployment. So it gives you a better appreciation when you're trying to run a lot of things. This is user state migration, which I make mention to you the other time. So, and this comes when you're trying to upgrade a particular machine from one version to the other. However, you don't want users to lose any of their, settings, like favorite, like, things important. You specify what you want to capture. The system will back that up before upgrading that computer. And, by the time it's done, you can put it back. And should in case while you're doing that, anything happens, the upgrade wasn't successful and some things wiped off, you can still get the user's configuration back because everything will be made available. Okay, you have your asset intelligence. Like I told you, this is where you look at your assets in total in terms of inventorized software, your software categorizations, your software family. Then here you can check the catalog of what and what that exists. Okay, and it gives you better appreciation of each one of them. Here you get inventorized software. Okay, none so far. We have hardware requirements. So this gives you that any application you want to install, everything is here. It tells you the minimum, it just gives you an understanding when you want to deploy, what you require to be able to deploy it. It tells you the minimum CPU, the minimum RAM. It tells you, in terms of a minimum disk space that you can use and validating state. So it just gives you, You see there are a lot of things here. So you have an understanding of its requirements before you start running any show within your system. So you have product lifecycle as well. So the product lifecycle just gives you, what and what it is that you have in your environment. Okay, so it tells you the support time remaining. This is where you'll be able to know if you have any software that is out of support or what it is, and the number of days that you have left before it's no longer supported, within the mainstream level. Then you have your software metering. Okay, this tells you, gives a kind of statistic show on what you have, based on all this configuration. Give it the original name, the version being installed, and the rules in terms of where they belong, based on your catalog ID. So here you have your compliance setting. This is where we configure compliance level, for what and what it is that you want to configure for, and you can have a baseline configuration for it. And as you see, what it does is that it manages the configuration baseline that contains the configuration item that is used if you want to deploy anything, right, to your collection to evaluate. You can create your own compliance base or download. You can download from online, or you can also create yours as well. So this is OneDrive for business profiling, and you have your remote connection profile. So you can create as many profiles depending on what you want to do. You have your compliance settings as well, where you can set. If you see that there's nothing there, it means that within this lab, we've not configured it, okay? So you have conditional access as well. This is where you link to Exchange Online, your SharePoint Online, and on-prem Exchange. Once you link it, you'll be able to see everything here. Then here we have your company resource access. This is where you want to create, you have your certificate profile, you have your email profile, your VPN profile, your Wi-Fi profile, and also Windows Hello for business profile. Then terms and condition and Windows 10 edition upgrades. Okay, and here you have your endpoint. Remember, as part of the core feature that I told you about, that it allows you to be able to manage malware. So you can create your anti-malware policies, okay, on what you want to run. You can have your bit defender management in case you have a bit defender in circulation, and you can manage everything here. You have your Windows Defender firewall policy, where you can set your firewall, if you want to use. So you can decide not to use the endpoint protection, because what always happens most times, the organization do have their security tools that they use to, protect or manage their own environment to send their own perimeter aspects, right? Then here allows you to be able to manage all corporate owned devices, okay, where you can manage, you can create an enrollment, and this allows you to be able to manage your mobile devices and what have you, and also Windows as well, where you can set everything up. Now, this Recast software you see here is a free version. I downloaded it, the third-party application. It doesn't come with SCCM, but it's compatible with it, and it does a lot of functions that you may want to leverage on in terms of running policies when it is not run, in terms of adding computers, deleting computers, instead of you using PowerShell scripting and what have you, and do a lot of things. So it's also a good software, that I use as well to integrate and make life much more easier for me to work with. So here we have software library. Software library, like I said, this is where you create an application. So if I click here, we have two things. You have application and you have packages. Before, a lot of configuration go through packages, but now people use application as well, because it's occurred differently, depending on what exactly you're trying to do at what point. So you can have your application management, and literally what it does is that it allows you to be able to manage application deployment for users or devices, and also allow you to be able to configure a global condition, okay, for all the applications in your hierarchy. Now that's under application management, and you can either do it using this package, or you do using this application under it, and you can set your global collection. There are some times as well where you might want to be targeting applications going into your virtualized environment, and you want to create applications strictly for it, where you're going to do here. We don't do it currently. We don't have any configuration at the moment relating to that, but those are part of the features that we might want to explore. Then you have your software library, okay, your software update. And your software update allows you to be able to manage software updates, software update groups, your deployment package for software update group, and automatic deployment role. Now, the whole essence of automatic deployment role is that rather than you every month creating a rule that needs to run and say, hey, I want all my Windows 10 run this policy, go to the hierarchy, go when Microsoft release the patches, go to the catalog, download this particular patch based on what I've set in terms of versions, language. I want Microsoft Office to do its own. I want that's Microsoft Office. You can do Microsoft operating system depending on each of those levels, and we can create each one of them. Here we have automatic group, and we have two. We have one for Windows 10 and one for Windows Server, okay, which is now going to go. And once it is run, it's going to download every patches exists under all software updates, okay? Everything is here based on what is synchronized online. Then whatever it's done is now going to come under your software update group when it is run. It is going to update the software update group for both of them, so you don't have to manually create it. When it is done, the package is going to be downloaded and it is going to be made available in your distribution package. And what happens there is that it's now going to go to all the distribution points that you have within your corporation, depending on where you distribute to. So it's just going to update it automatically. If you don't have your automatic deployment rule configured, you have to be doing it manually, which is tedious, right? So you can specify when at the month you want each of these rules to occur. You can set a PowerShell scripting and say, hey, and run your task scheduler and say, this is when I want it to run, or you can manually do it yourself, okay? And you have, remember that I talked about third-party patching? So there's nothing here because I didn't specify, but as time goes on, we'll be managing our Adobe and other third-party applications that we want to manage and ensure that the catalog is downloaded. And all those things are being specified under the administration where we specify what and what we're trying to get out from the system. Okay, then we have your operating system. This is where you create your drivers. If you want to image a computer, either the model, each of the computer comes with its own drivers. And you want to ensure that when you are running a task sequence and you're putting operating system, you want to be able to specify, download all the drivers that you use in your organization so that by the time the task sequence finish, you don't lose either the driver or you don't lose some certain things. So this is where you configure your driver packages, where it's going to come, and this is where you put your operating system. We've not done anything of such, but in this class, we're going to be creating, we're going to be creating it as part of this tutorial, as part of this training, okay? Then we have this is for upgrades. If I need to upgrade from one version to the other, I create it here. For fresh installation, I create the operating system here. So I'm going to show you how it is created as we proceed with the class. This is your boot image. This is where you get, when I talked about the ADK, Windows ADK, where you have the boot image that the system will boot from when you're trying to run a task sequence through the pick the booting section. So it's going to use this boot image to boot up. Remember that when you have a flash drive and you want to make it bootable, this is what it's used. So this is what it's going to run during the upgrade section, and it's going to come. I've not distributed it. We're going to be doing all this in line with the exercise. This is where you create your task sequence, either for application, either for operating system, either for upgrades. We create everything here. You have your Windows 10 service in here. This is where you'll be able to know what version you're running, what rings, and you specify if you want to run a semi-annual channel or you want to run a long-term servicing channel. A long-term servicing channel is always when you do once a year. Then the semi, it comes either in quarter or you can do semi 6 months and you upgrade and the system will automatically do that. So, but it still depends on what configuration you're defining and when you want it to run and what connection you want to target before that will occur. So there's a lot of configuration when it comes to that. Some of them are part of this class, some of them are not. It's part of the advanced class, and you can set your service planning that you want to do. This comes with a new feature, which is called the desktop analytical service. It's not part of this class, but I'll be configuring it and I'll show you how it looks like when it is done. We have your Microsoft Edge management as well. This is where you patch all the Microsoft Edge on your computer. We all know that apart from the Internet Explorer, Microsoft has released what we call the Microsoft Edge, and you can patch each one of them. So the system will tell you how many systems required for you to do it. It's going to tell you how many is installed. So far, there's none because we've not configured anything and we've not downloaded anything to have done a yardstick of checking to ensure that that is done. So that's for that. And this is for Office 365 in terms of deployment, where you patch. I told you that we have what's it called? Microsoft Office 2016, 2013, Microsoft 365, because we have 365 deployments, which we've done, but we've not started patching. We've not created it, but we have everything done here. If we go under assets and compliance, let me see if we create something relating to that here. Okay. Global collections. Yeah, so we have something relating to that here that we created. So the system identified that we have 6 systems in count that have Microsoft 365 application deployed in them, but we've not started patching, which we're going to start from, next month, and I can show you guys, what it is, even though it's not part of the class like I mentioned, but I'm going to show you guys how you can patch each one of them when it comes to that. Because this, in terms of patching, is the job of a patch manager, which comes with your L3 and L2. Some certain L2 can also do that depending on their job responsibilities. Okay, so that's for software library. Then last one, we have what we call the monitoring. This is where you monitor a lot of things. You monitor alerts. Okay, if you click on alerts, you can monitor a lot of subscriptions and a lot of things. You can run queries based on what you have. These are predefined queries that is already configured. So if I say I want to see all client systems, if I double click on it, the system is going to generate the report. It's going to generate the report for me and tell me all the clients that is there. So you don't need to manually configure to create a query for it. It exists already. It's going to give you every detail that you need relating to what you've clicked. So there are a lot of queries that you can leverage on, and you can also, create your own as well. So we have the reporting side of the business. I told you that with the endpoint configuration manager, you now have a Power BI that you could set the dashboard. You have a normal reporting, which deals with the SQL Server reporting service, and you can make use of that. This shows you the site hierarchy, and you can monitor that as well to see if it's active or not, and see if there's any alert on it. You have your site, your system status, where you can check your site status to see if everything is okay or there issue at any point in time with any of your configuration. You can also check your component status to see if everything is fine. Here it's telling me that I have a critical, that the availability is offline when it comes to my discovery agent and this. So I'm going to check that outside this class to see if everything is fine, to see why this is done. Now again, is that if as time goes on and you learn what we call SCOM, which is a system configuration operational manager, you can create an alert that automatically tell you what exactly has caused this alert to have occurred, and it will advise you on what you need to do to ensure that it's taken care of to resolve. Okay, this has to do with conflict records. If there are conflict records within your site level, it's going to show you here, and you have your site management query as well, where you can query anything. It is here, you just run a query. Deployment tells you or shows your deployment level, all the things you've deployed. These are the things that we've deployed within the environment so far, and it's going to tell you the percentage of compliance. And you can check, like this Kaspersky is not on all the machine. It said 95%. It said one particular system failed deployment. You can decide to check it and see which particular system failed. So you see already compliant with this, and this one just got deployed. It's already installed. So successful, that after it was deployed, it's going to see which one of them have a default. Then it's going to symbolize for you, indicate for you which one is successful after you're already compliant. Or already compliant meaning that it exists before the software, that deployment executes on that machine. So if you found that the software exists, I don't need to redeploy it, then it's going to tell you that it's already compliant, that it has the software. So this one is it said it has error, which is our LT. I told you this system is no longer in circulation, even though the software didn't finish deployment on it. So once I remove it from here under our compliance, and I go under device and I yank it off from the computer, that is going to turn to full compliance, because like I said, the DT6 is no longer available. It's out of our environment. So there's difference between remove. There's difference between this in terms of delete. You just don't use delete, so you don't mess anything up within your environment. So there's difference between delete and you removing from collection. This is not collection. This is just all devices. So I'm deleting it from the environment because we no longer have it. So if I go back under my monitor and I go to my deployment and I will run, meaning there's what we call run summarization. It's going to rerun itself and check the status and in few minutes, it's going to clear it off. You see that the machine is no longer here, but the icon is there to change. So it's no longer error, so everything is going to be successful. So in a few minutes, if we come back there, we'll see that this will change by itself. So we give it some minutes. We come back and we check there. I'm not going to close it, so for you to see what I'm saying. So you have phase deployment, depending on the kind of deployment you're running. There are some deployment that you can do in phase rather than having a total deployment. Like I said, everything depends on your business requirement for you to be able to identify, what phase, what kind of, if you want to choose that path to install in phases. Then you have what we call your client operation. And the system gives you, what it is and when it expires and all, depending on, what configuration that is occurring at that particular point in time. It's just an operation that is running in terms of running a script. And this is script status. Okay, nothing. Here is client status. This tells you the status of your client. So now it's telling me that 5 is not active, that is inactive, and we're going to check why. This tells me that 14 is active. So I may want to check why exactly is 5 not active. Okay, so it doesn't mean that the system have a problem, but one thing you should know is that if a system is not on the network for some time and policies are not being run, it's going to be regarded as inactive. Okay, until policies are run, the system could sense it, then you'll see to say that they are active. Okay, and one system has no agent on it, and the system can tell you, and it is glaring when you go to asset and compliance, it's going to tell you which of the system does not have agents. And this is freshly deployed. Is a computer. We just deployed this machine yesterday, and I don't know why it has not run, but I'm going to check it, and I can also use that as troubleshooting for you guys on how you can check to see if agent is not installed, and now you can redeploy the agent to it by using a signed client. Sometimes when you have a remediation PowerShell scripting, it could check it and remediate it by itself without you having to do it by yourself. Okay, here you can also check, do your client check. You see, it said my client check, everything is fine, but here it's going to give you in terms of activity to tell you which one is active. You see before it says no client installed on one. You see that it's no longer existing. So if we go back to your Kaspersky deployment, let's refresh and see if it has changed. Okay, it has not changed. We're going to go back. But one thing you should know is that there's nothing under error again. Sometimes it takes time, so we just have to wait for it to run so we can see the difference. Okay, and you look at the timing, you see that nothing new has come because this shows on the system that it happened 5:27, and this is showing us that it is 5:30. Now we're almost done. I know the class is supposed to end by 5:30. Please spare me 5 minutes to be able to show you this little one, then we can call it a day. So here you can check your production client deployment. The system is going to tell you the level of compliance, which one it is and which one is not. We have pre-production, because sometimes you can create a pre-production environment for you to say, before the client deployment go to a particular machine, I want to be able to see its functionality before I push it in total, to this machine. Sorry, I'm trying to see somebody, one of you sent me a message. I'm just trying to see the message. Okay, yeah, okay, Carl just sent the message. Yeah, this one is giving you a client L dashboard where it's going to give you the status of each of your agents and tells you which one you should get yourself concerned about and which one you should not. And it gives you a yardstick also telling you in terms of percentage of each of these versions of software operating system that exists within your environment. Okay. So like I said, this is just monitoring. You're monitoring every activities that you're doing with under your software library. You see everything here, and you could also see some of the asset and compliance, which is what exists here. This is your core management that I discussed with you guys when you have Intune and your config manager. So here is going to tell you in detail. That's why you see here is going to be talking about hybrid AD join and what you have on-prem. You see here load managed by Intune is because both of them are being managed together and they are Microsoft products. I tell you that there's difference between co-management and coexistence. So you might go in the interview section and they can ask you the difference between your co-management and your coexistence. You just want to be able to differentiate them and be able to explain to them that co-management is when you have your configuration manager with Intune, and coexisting is when you have a third party being managed alongside with your configuration manager. Then you have your Surface devices. The system can identify if you have any Surface within your environment. This is your cloud management, and this only populates when you have it when you have a cloud section, a cloud configured that is linked within your configuration manager. So it's still trying to populate the information out. That's why you see. So this is it. So you see the system pops out and it tells you users that you have in your AD users. It tells you your hybrid users, and it tells you, your AD users as well. So you can able to see which one are in hybrid mode, and which one is in strictly your Azure AD users, and which one you have as on-prem users. Remember, Azure AD users are users that were created online, and the one on-prem is what you have on-prem. But in combined, because everything is managed within one interface, which you can manage either on cloud in Azure AD or you manage on-prem. So it's going to bring everything together. So there are two configurations. You have what we call the device write back, and you have your hybrid configuration. So the system will be able to identify what parameters when it comes to device deployment, what you're trying to use. And here we now tell you your client, approved client with Azure AD identity, and you'll be able to see each one of them in terms of the compliance rate. Okay, so here you have collection evaluation, where the system checks your full evaluation, your incremental. We have none yet, so you can run it. And you have your scenario S check, which check the status of your SQL Server service broker health, and also that of the client action. So what I've just done today is to give you a kind of heads up on what to expect in the entire SCCM environment beyond what the training for your junior infrastructure class is all about, and also what you can do in a large scale as a senior infrastructure engineer from start to finish when you build the infrastructure from beginning to the end, and also manage the operation. So don't forget, whatever you see when you start working in terms of the interface depend on the kind of security role that's been assigned to your account, and that is what you can need to do. So that comes to my explanation on the what's it called, the tour that we have on it. The class is open for 1 or 2 if you have any question before we call it a day and meet tomorrow.
No question from me.
Thank you. Any other person? Any question?
No question from my side.
Thank you.
Samuel, can you send you said you'll send us the questions regarding
the interview questions? Yes, I'll make it available today. I'm going to push it to everyone. I'll send it along with the video. With the video that I'm going to be sharing today, okay? I hope you guys
when are we getting the video?
You guys get your videos after the training. So because we're using Teams,
Today.
You get it today, yes. We get once it's downloaded, it's going to be made available to me. Once I stop it, it's not instantaneous. So once it is all compressed and made available, that's when I always share with you. So what I do is I always put it in our OneDrive and I share with you guys. That's how you've been getting the one for the server class and Active Directory class as well. Okay, any other question?
Just the last question. From tomorrow, we'll have the installation and everything. So we'll work practically on.
You are not doing SCCM installation. It's not part of the junior class. So the installation has to do with the advanced.
Give us tips now, Abba.
There's no. I already explained what I need to put for you in this section, and I can give you a heads up on what in terms of what configuration needs to be done, but we are not installing SCCM from beginning. We're working on the operational side of the business, which is in line with your curriculum. But I'll give you a heads up on what you need to be able to deploy servers, which is, I'm going to share that tomorrow. What you need and what configuration needs to be done at each level, then, we move ahead. I think that is fair enough.
So it's all theory after this, like there is no practical.
There is practical. There are a lot of things to be done in SCCM. The SCCM have different levels. You have like I said, start to finish, the infrastructure side of the business, where you deploy, you create the server, you install all the roles, you have your configuration done, your GPU in terms of port openings, your SQL installation, your SCCM installation, the Active Directory schema deployment. All those ones at the infrastructure level. Then what this class is all about is operation, which is what you'll be working on as L2 or L1, depending on the job you get, where you'll be creating applications. But I'm including patch management as well with it, where you learn how to patch. It's not part of it, but I'm going to include it as part of your class. And that's what you're going to be doing at the L2 level and L1. L3 level has to do with the infrastructure, where you build the infrastructure as a whole. You manage, when there's any issue, you go through the logs, understand the logs. But I'm going to explain how logs is being interpreted in this class as well, so that even when you're deploying application and anything fails, you know which log to look into and how to resolve it.
And guys, installing SCCM is like one of the hardest installations and configuration. It's not easy, and it takes like maybe at least 2-3 classes, right?
Yep, it takes up to 3 classes and a lot of hours. There are a lot of
just
things
the installation. Plus, also when you will be working in an SCCM environment, it is not that what you will go there and install SCCM, right? It's like the SCCM will be already installed. All you do is just manage it and do other configuration.
Yeah.
Except that what if you join an organization and they don't have SCCM and they ask you to install and do the whole thing configuration, then that would be a different case. But that will be only 5 to 10% of the case. And 90-95% will be what in SCCM will be already installed. All you will be doing is managing it and administering it.
Yeah, but most times organization will not tell you to install only when they know that you're L3, L4, and you understand the entire architecture, because they're not going to open it for you. Most times they get in touch with vendors that will come and do it. You just shadow them. Once it is done, they hand over to you and you manage. That is why I told you guys from day one that access is part of the advanced class. It requires a lot of resource. You have to be prepared for it, and a lot of things have to be put into consideration before you can run all that.
So
hold on. I'm going to stop recording, then we continue our discussion.